Welcome back to Off the Pitch, the podcast where we chat with individuals working within and shaping the game of soccer from off the pitch. Today's guest is Chris Canetti. Chris is currently the president of the Houston 2026 World Cup host committee. Not only do we chat to Chris about his current role and what it takes to become a World Cup host city, but we also spoke to him about his previous roles with the New York Metro Stars, Houston Dynamo and Dash. In this conversation, we got a bunch of great insight about what it takes to build a club from scratch, not just once, but twice, and how the city of Houston got to host the biggest All-Star Game in MLS history at the time. This episode is full of some really great stories and some awesome behind-the-scenes knowledge. I know we enjoyed it, and I know you will too, so let's jump into it. All right, Chris, welcome to the podcast. So first things first, we want to introduce you to our audience a little bit, so if you could kind of give us a rundown of how you got started, not just in soccer, but also in your career, kind of starting after college, and then we'll get into some more specifics after that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate being here. Good to be here. I've worked in sports for almost 30 years now. Started back in 1994 in minor league baseball as a clubhouse attendant, the lowest job on the totem pole that you could ever have in sports, literally in the locker room, washing uniforms and shining shoes and all that good stuff. So, now I'm currently the president of the Houston 2026 World Cup host committee. What that means effectively is that I'm currently organizing all things around the World Cup matches that are going to be taking place in Houston in 2 years. And from within that 30-year period on my journey, I worked 19 years in Major League Soccer, with 6 years in New York, with the team called the Metro Stars, now known as the Red Bull. And then, of course, 13 years in Houston with the Houston Dynamo, many of those years as president of the Houston Dynamo. So long sports career, and again, many of those years being in the world of soccer, whether it be with MLS or the World Cup. And I even was part of the NWSL as I started the Houston women's team called the Dash, and oversaw that operation for a handful of years as well. So, that's a quick little bit of background about me.
Just coming off that, you've been in sports and especially within soccer for so long. One of the kind of things that I was curious about is what were the kind of major differences between the New Haven Ravens and also the New York Metro Stars when you joined? Because I know MLS wasn't huge at the time and the budgets were a lot smaller than they are now. So I imagine they kind of operated on like a kind of a similar level.
Yeah, so we're going back 24 years now when I jumped from AA baseball in New Haven, Connecticut to Major League Soccer in New York, New Jersey, if you will. The reality is the business of sport is fundamentally the same. Whether you work in soccer, baseball, football, basketball, hockey, golf, whatever it is, the same principles apply in terms of what the business is all about. The differences really are unique to the markets, unique to the sports. Obviously, there's a whole different soccer and culture in soccer than there is, let's say, in baseball or football. So it's kind of easy to transition from one sport to the next when you have the fundamentals of the business down and you know exactly what you're trying to achieve. But that's just it's just about trying to learn the intricacies of a new market, a new club, a new stadium, all the different things that are unique to that one place. In this particular situation, I went from a small 6,000 seat historic stadium, Yale Field, on the campus of Yale University in New Haven, to at the time it was called Giants Stadium in East Rutherford, New York. So again, a lot of things you just have to adjust to and learn about when you're making those moves from one place to the next.
Just kind of on top of that, moving from baseball to soccer is kind of a big jump in terms of the sport and the culture surrounding it. As you just said, being within the business side of a sports organization is generally going to be kind of the same wherever you go. But what were kind of the reasons that caused you to switch sports?
Yeah, so I was at a different point in my career. My only job in sports up to that point was in New Haven, Connecticut, in AA minor league baseball. in the Eastern League. I was looking to take my career to the next level. And while I was the general manager of the baseball team at that time, the youngest general manager in minor league baseball at that time, I wanted to elevate my career. And I really didn't know much about soccer or MLS. To your point earlier, the league was only in its fifth season of operation. But I saw a good opportunity to move from a small market, New Haven, Connecticut, to a big market, New York. Again, from a small little college baseball stadium to a professional NFL stadium. Even the Metro Stars games were broadcast on the Madison Square Garden network. You could see Metro Stars games on ESPN and see scores across the bottom. So it just felt like I was moving to a much bigger opportunity where I could perhaps develop myself and be more in the shop window, if you will, in the New York market to hopefully get a job with the Yankees or the Mets or the Knicks or the Rangers or the Jets or the Giants. It turned out that when I moved into soccer, into MLS, I really, really took a liking and a joy to the job and to the sport. And also at the time, to your point, also MLS was such a young league. There was opportunities for growth much quicker within MLS than there was perhaps in other leagues and sports. So it just ended up that that's why I made that move and didn't intend to stay in soccer pretty much the rest of my career, but that's just how it worked out.
Awesome. Well, we're glad definitely to have had you for all this time because you've made some incredible changes in the sport through your career. Um, but another thing that I'm a little bit curious about is what was your kind of perception of the future of soccer when you joined the sport? Because I know obviously now it's in a much further along and better place. The sport itself has grown so much within the country, and then on top of that, now we don't have just the MLS, but we have multiple divisions underneath that as well. So what did the kind of your vision for it or idea of it look like when you first made that jump over back in 2000?
Yeah, I think everybody over the course of the last 25 plus years, 30 years, has realized that soccer has amazing potential in this country for lots of different reasons. So I think I was much the same at the time. I think knew MLS was a new league, knew the sport was up and coming. The World Cup had been in the United States 6 years prior at that point. So I had this perception that there was the big opportunity for soccer to grow. And we went through some tough times. Early on, first year or two after I took that job. There was lots of rumors, speculation that MLS was not going to survive. But luckily, some things happened, and the league got through those early years, those difficult years, and of course, has really blossomed over the course of the last 20 plus years to become an amazing, not only domestic league, but internationally renowned at this point, and just continues to grow. So it's interesting that while the growth potential for soccer was massive back in 2000 when I made that move, the same remains the case today. As much as the sport has grown over your lifetime and my 24 years in the business, the ceiling is still very high and the potential is still amazing. And when the World Cup comes here in 2026, it's only going to take the sport to new heights and new levels that we haven't seen yet. So it's a great time to be associated with soccer in this country, and exciting to see actually where it is 20 years from now.
Yeah, I know both of us are incredibly excited, not just for the World Cup because we're huge soccer nerds and fans, but also like we went to go see a Copa America game. We got to see Brazil play Colombia here at Levi's, which was amazing. And I know from my time in Houston that you guys host a bunch of those events too. So it's gonna be such a great summer in 2 years. It's gonna be so much fun. Um,
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. You look at the Copa America and the Gold Cups and all the other international soccer friendlies. I was at Man United Arsenal at SoFi Stadium for a friendly this past weekend. There's so many different indicators of growth for the game. I mean, to your point also earlier, not just at MLS, but the lower divisions are growing here with USL, with NWSL. The new women's soccer league called the USL Super League launches, I believe, next month. So there's so many different signs of the game just growing on multiple levels here in the United States.
Yeah, it really is awesome. And then on top of that, we have not just the lower leagues expanding and growing, but we have the MLS and everyone growing as well. Kind of moving a little bit forward in your career to Houston. You joined Houston 2006 when also the club started. What were kind of the biggest things and focuses for you in terms of building a new team? Because you'd been a part of two organizations that had been pre-existing, already had kind of a little bit of a sense of what they were doing and what they were trying to do. I mean, naturally, New York Metro Stars, they rebranded as you left. But with Houston, you guys were building something from the ground up pretty much. You had the team from San Jose, but I know a lot of the front office staff didn't come, or at least didn't stay. And I know that that is kind of a big thing for a company when a lot of the staff turns over and you kind of have to teach people to do new things and grow people and give them experience within their role. So how was that not just for you moving to a new place, to a new market, but how was it also as a business and as a company trying to grow the Houston Dynamo into what it is today?
Yeah, well, first of all, it was a lot of fun. It was enjoyable to build something from scratch. We had to do everything. There was nothing existed. We had to put together the right staff, the right structure, build a culture internally, build a brand externally to introduce this market to the Dynamo, to Major League Soccer, to build a match day experience in a very difficult, challenging situation over at Old Robertson Stadium, which has since been knocked down. Um, and all the things that go along with all of that, right? It was literally one step at a time, putting grassroots initiatives in place, community endeavors and activities, everything. So just your basic, simple business fundamentals from accounting and finance and legal and IT and everything, just building it from square one and just watching it progress over the years. So it was a lot of fun. It certainly helped that we had a winning team out of the gate that helped build the excitement and the interest and gained us media coverage. And, those things lead to better ticket sales and better sponsorships and all of the things that you need in a cycle to really help build something. So it really worked out outstanding. The success of the club early on, on and off the field helped allow us to get into a situation where we could build a new stadium downtown, soccer specific. And then once you do that, obviously, the growth is amazing with naming rights and suites and club seats and other stadium partnerships and all that kind of stuff. So, it was a really fun process to be a part of building that club from scratch and overseeing it for 13 years. We were super successful in every single way. And even on the field, as you know, two MLS Cups, we were runners up on two other occasions in the MLS Cup final with challenging losses on the road at LA, David Beckham and Landon Donovan and others. Multiple playoff appearances and making it to the conference finals seemingly almost every single year. So all of that really helps to create a winning brand and excitement around the club. It was fantastic. And of course, we added the women's team in there back in 2014 and was able to go through the same process of building out the Dash as well.
Yeah, that was another one of my questions was about the Dash specifically. We know that the Dash are one of the earlier expansion teams in the NWSL, almost, I guess, considered one of the original teams now at this point. When was it kind of like decided to bring a women's soccer team to Houston? Because at that point and at that time, it was kind of an anomaly to have one of those teams in your city. But now it's becoming a much larger thing. The league itself has grown so much, and it's like women's soccer seems to kind of be taking over the country, especially with the Olympics going on right now and the Women's World Cup happening last year. But I know it's a little bit difficult to, at that point, get people to go in on a project like that. So kind of when was that decided, and how did that come about?
Yeah, so 2013 was the inaugural season of NWSL. I didn't have it really on my radar too much that was going on. Um, but at the end of the first season, I received a call from a friend of mine who was running the Portland Timbers and said, "Geez, have you guys ever thought about having a women's side?" And I said, "Not really, to be honest with you. Tell me more about it." And he shared the success stories of what they were doing in Portland and across the league. So we started to look into it and thought that it could be a good addition to what we're doing here in Houston. We felt that as the Dynamo, if we wanted to be the pinnacle of soccer in the market, that the one way that we could help achieve that is by having soccer for all, both men and women professionally. So we also saw a good business opportunity around it. So we put a business plan together and presented it to the ownership right after the end of the 2013 NWSL season. The initial feedback wasn't well received. There wasn't a lot of momentum and excitement to do it, but we continued to show reasons why it made sense. And ultimately, they agreed to let us go forward. So it was around, I want to say, December of 2013 that we officially announced the team. And we played our first match in the spring of 2014. So we had a very, very, very short turnaround. It was challenging to say the least. If we could go back and do it again, we would probably want to give ourselves a little bit more time. Opposite of the Dynamo, the Dash did not come out of the gates with a winning side on the field. We were an expansion team that needed to get the players via the expansion draft mainly. So we were getting basically second and third team players. So unfortunately, the team didn't have the same success as the Dynamo on the field out of the gate, but very proud of having created the Houston Dash and what its means and what it represents in the community. And it's good to have seen that program grow over the years alongside NWSL. So it's a real legacy piece that I'm proud of.
Yeah, and also on a little bit of a more personal note, I know that my sister and then also your daughters were a little bit involved in the launching of the Dash too, which was really cool.
That's right. That's right. They were, both soccer players back in the day at the youth level, and we had a bunch of young ladies out to the press conference. We incorporated them into the launch of the team.
Yeah, it was really cool. I didn't know too much about it at the time because I was playing soccer and growing up and being a kid. But once I saw those videos come out and I kind of realized what was going on, I was like, hang on a second. This is like so cool. Like my sister's in like the launch video of a professional team. And then I was like, oh, there's Chris's daughter. Like that's one of our family friends. Like what the heck's going on here? And I'm seeing this video on YouTube and social media and stuff. It was really cool. And
Yeah.
also it was so early at the time for something like that to happen, which made it even cooler.
Yeah, you're right. So the Dash there was 8 teams in the original league. The Dash were the ninth. Since the Dash came on, there was a couple of subtractions that came and went out of the league, but I believe the league totals at 14 right now, and I think there's some other expansion. But again, then you also have the inaugural season of the USL Super League coming up here in a couple of months. They're going to play on the winter calendar and kick off in August and go through the spring. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. They were sanctioned as Division I soccer, same level as NWSL. So like I said, it's gonna be fun to track that and see what kind of success the Super League can have in women's soccer.
Yeah, the Super League's exciting. We spoke to Jeremy Allenbow of the USL Championship a few weeks back, and his sort of vision after we were talking was cool for it. On the note of when you started with the Dash, that the league was so small, and you were then at that point, maybe 6 years, 10 years, or 8 years, whatever it was, into your journey with the Dynamo. How did the infrastructure of the NWSL compare to what you were then sort of used to and ingrained with the Dynamo that ever made that launch more difficult or maybe easier given the short timeline and maybe the smaller infrastructure? What did that look like?
Yeah, so one of the arguments that we had for why it made sense for us to put a team in Houston was because we had some infrastructure in place already, right? With the stadium, where we had available dates for the team to play, with the training facility, where we had fields and other amenities and facilities available for the Dash. So the Portland Timbers were the first and only MLS team associated with an NWSL team out of the first 8, and then the Dynamo became number 2. Houston was number 2, and then Orlando came in as number 3. So you started to see this trend where maybe MLS teams were going to get involved in NWSL because that infrastructure already existed, didn't need to be built, and you could coexist in those ways. So from a local infrastructure perspective, that was a huge advantage to an MLS team having an NWSL team, or vice versa, an NWSL team being a part of an MLS franchise. But clearly, from across the league, from the overall, yes, it was lacking. The investment wasn't where it needed to be at the time, but certainly it's understandable. There's the step-by-step process. If I was to take you back 10 years earlier in MLS, the infrastructure there wasn't very good either, right? We had a lot of challenges and problems with stadiums and training pitches and sites and overall investment in the league as well. So it's just part of the process. Again, you look at NWSL today, the ownership is there's a very wealthy group of owners across the league who are committed to the development of this league. They're making the investment in it. The franchise values are skyrocketing. LAFC just sold a couple weeks ago for a reported $250 million. We paid a $500,000 expansion fee into NWSL back in 2013. So that tells you, I guess we made a good decision. But it's growing so fast, and a lot of it is a tribute to the new owners and their willingness to invest in this infrastructure and put the game to a higher level.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the level change in investment is needed. So I'm glad to see that it's there. And I know you'd mentioned you had a contact at Portland. So I've seen the forwards play. What was it that they were telling you that the success and the enjoyment that they had of launching the women's side that also influenced you, to pull the trigger outside of everything you just see on your own side in Houston and the potential, but actually based on their experience in Portland that, made them reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, when you look at anything soccer related in Portland, you have to understand that it's not an apples to apples comparison. They have something unique, special going on there, and it's not easy to duplicate. In fact, not many markets across North America have been able to duplicate the magic that exists in Portland. I think they call themselves Soccer City, USA, and they probably earned that right. So, again, it wasn't like we looked at Portland and said, we're going to be exactly the same in Houston. We knew there was going to be lots of differences, but we certainly looked at the economics of what it took to the costs in particular to put on an NWSL team, and compared that to what we thought we could generate from a revenue perspective to make it work out. So, we learned a lot about the business side, and like I said, the financial structure of the league and of the club, and it was different from MLS, different in a way that made it attractive, and so we gave it a go. We put a case forward to make it work.
I know you had referred to maybe the very beginning not being well received, the plan. What was it about that wasn't well received that had to be sort of tweaked before the approval really came in?
Well, keep in mind there was numerous leagues ahead of NWSL on the women's side that had given it a go and had failed in the U.S. So our owners had been a part of those leagues already. They had experienced the difficulties and the challenges and the financial losses of operating a women's soccer club here in the United States. So they were skeptical of going down the same path again, understandably so. So we just needed to continue to convince them that the economics looked good here. The entry point in terms of an expansion fee was a good deal. The growth of the game, and all the benefits that the NWSL team brought to the Houston Dynamo, and how we could leverage that opportunity to benefit that club as well. So we kept pushing, kept telling the story of why we thought it made sense, and ultimately got the group on board.
Nice. And I guess essentially adding what you'd experienced 8 years prior, how did your sort of day-to-day, week-to-week life change when you suddenly had now 2 teams to look after?
Yeah, I mean, look, whether it's 1 team or 2 teams, this is a 24/7 job. You're always on. You may not always be in the office, but you're always there's always something going on, and the cell phone's always busy. So yeah, it added some hours to the day. It added some stress to the day, but we put some management in place where there were people that were focused on the dash right off the bat, from technical side in particular. So yes, it certainly added to my load of work and stress, but it was, like I mentioned before, launching the Dynamo was so much fun. I would say the same about the dash. It was really a labor of love. So even if there was a lot of work involved, it was a joy to do.
I'm sure it was fun to, I guess, relive the boots on the ground startup mentalities you had with the Dynamo, being able to recreate that with some infrastructure, with the stadium already existing, and not having to start really at zero. Another thing I want to touch on or ask about before we, I'm sure, jump into your current role. It was in 2010. You were a big part of you're hosting the All-Star Game, and you brought Man United over to the States. And I'd noticed that a few years prior to that, it was big names, albeit, in teams like Celtic and West Ham and Everton, but making a jump to which the team at the time who was most likely the most globally known team, and really in their sort of highly dominant era as well. And every team that's come to the All-Star Game since then has been on that caliber. What did you do to get that game and to get Man United, and sort of make that jump from, Premier League teams and Celtic to really those top caliber of teams, and sort of pave the path for all the games that came after that?
Well, there's a beautiful story behind this, and your podcast may be the first time it's ever been told publicly. So in 2009, we were at the All-Star Game in Salt Lake, Everton, to your point, Tim Howard. And we were approached by Major League Soccer to host the 2010 All-Star Game in Houston. It was originally supposed to be scheduled at Red Bull Arena in New York, but construction delays had put that off to 2011. So the league asked Houston to step in last minute, take the 2010 All-Star Game. Keep in mind, 2010 was a World Cup year. So the league had a very small vision for the All-Star Game. They wanted it to be played at Robertson Stadium, MLS All-Stars against Chivas de Guadalajara. And so we said yes. We on the spot in Salt Lake at the All-Star Game accepted the league's request to host in 2010. And under those premises, that we would have it at our, the college football stadium against Chivas de Guadalajara from Mexico. As time went on, I started to realize that's not good enough. If we're going to have the MLS All-Star Game in Houston, we need to think bigger. We need to play this match at NRG Stadium. We need to have a global giant here, because Chivas de Guadalajara has played in Houston all the time. It wasn't going to be anything special. The league officials said, no, we just need to get through this. It's like I said, a World Cup year. We're not going to be able to get any major teams. Let's just get through this. And I guess I was a lot younger, naive, and perhaps even more arrogant at the time. And I wouldn't take that for an answer. So, tried reaching out to all the big global clubs directly, Man United, Real Madrid, Barcelona, right? We need to have them here. And it quickly became one of the three. I can't remember which one was no, we can't come. The other one was a maybe. But somehow we got a meeting with Man United executives in Houston. And I called the league and I said, by the way, we've got Man United coming to Houston to talk All-Star Game. A league representative came down, and we were able to work a deal. And we got Man United to show up for the All-Star Game. And the game was, like I said, was played at NRG Stadium. It sold out. It was the fifth largest All-Star game in the history of American sports at that time, not just soccer, all sports, 70,000 seats. It started a trend where for the next several years, MLS All-Star games were against big branded clubs like that, in some cases in NFL stadiums. And it also, by the way, in 2010, at the time, was such a big spectacle here in Houston that it, I think, cemented the public support for the Dynamo Stadium, which came online 2 years later, right? Helped get the financing and the deal in place to make that happen. So there's a real legacy behind that match that took place in 2010. Again, something else that I'm very proud of from my career. Of course, the MLS All-Stars were beaten 5-2 in that game, but it was cool. Local superstar Brian Ching scored a header goal in that match in front of his home fans. Really a great moment, and I'm like I said, very proud that that worked out the way it worked out, and that there was, like I said, a little bit of a backstory there in terms of how we ultimately landed Manchester United at NRG Stadium versus Chivas de Guadalajara at Robertson Stadium.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, thanks for letting us to be the first to hear that story. That's really an awesome story. I guess when you landed the meeting with Man United and it was now, sort of confirmed interest, what did that, I guess, pitch, I'm sure, look like of why they should come over and do this game versus, all the other options they could have during a preseason?
Gosh, I don't even know if I remember what the pitch was. Look, at that time, and actually it's no different than today now that I think about it. These teams they're making these preseason trips every year, whether it's to the United States or to Asia or to wherever. So I just think we needed to make a compelling argument that coming over to the U.S. in 2010 in a World Cup year, like I said, probably weeks after the World Cup ended, was the right move. It needed to include not only a match in Houston, but other matches, right? They don't come over just for one match. I do recall that I think Man United played at Kansas City a couple nights before they played us, played the All-Star game in Houston. I'm not sure what other match they might have played, but it was really, making sure that we had the right opportunity for an All-Star game, paying them the right fee, and making sure that they had a series of matches to play on their U.S. tour for it to make sense altogether. So there's a couple different moving parts to that.
Yeah, the summer tours that they now have, the tracks, the La Liga teams and Serie A teams and everyone over is really cool to see. And I'm sure that is intentional with the World Cup coming up and building brand equity over here. But that's cool for all of us to reap the benefits as fans in the meantime. Another thing I wanted to draw some attention to in 2010 before we fast forward on a personal note of something that you received was being part of the 2010 class of 40 under 40 for Sports Business Journal. And when we're, doing research for today, I noticed some of the other big names that were on that list that I just want to call out for everyone that might be listening, just to understand kind of the caliber of that class that you were involved in. So some names of Sam Kennedy, who's the CEO of the Red Sox, Tom Krinsky, who's now the CEO of Reebok, Eric Shanks, who is CEO of Fox Sports, Keith Catchell, who's CBO of NHL, Daryl Morey, who is the president of the 76ers, and then Paul Danforth, who is president of CAA's sports arm. Those are some big names, that I guess whoever put together that list had a good eye for talent. That now 14 years later, those individuals have ended up in their roles. But you are right up there in terms of who's had that skyrocketing career as well. So going back to 2010, how did that feel to be part of something that I would assume every sports executive wants to be on those lists? Of course, the team success, the organization's success is is number one. But in the back of their mind, every year that list comes out, I'm sure everyone's hoping next year I want to be on that list. So what did that feel like to get that recognition?
I appreciate you sharing that information with me. I didn't realize that all those folks were part of that class. Just haven't reviewed the that roster in a long time, but obviously they've gone on to really incredible careers. That was a lot of fun. That was a big honor. Everybody knows, what a big, how much notoriety that is, and what an honor it is to be part of the Sports Business Journal 40 Under 40. So that was an awesome time. That was a lot of fun. Very, very exciting. And I believe I was the first MLS executive to ever receive that honor. So that was cool as well. Now there's multiple MLS executives receiving it every year. It shows you the growth of the league. So, it was cool to be among the first MLS people to ever break through into that group. And again, now, now there's, like I said, you look at the list, there's always a bunch of MLS people who are making it. So that was a great time. So I wish I was still eligible for that award.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I know even 2 years before then as well, you had been named the MLS Executive of the Year. So it makes total sense that you would then be the first from the MLS to be involved in that list. I guess going to that Executive of the Year award as well, which is of course a big one. I would have assumed that Executive of the Year would somewhat be aligned with the team with the most success on the field in any given year, because you would assume that would also lead to, of course, a lot of financial gains being the top team. But in 2008, Columbus Crew did the double, so they were very much the dominant team on the field. So what did 2008 look like, having only been 2 years in to kind of that journey that allowed you, as a leader, and I know there's a bunch of other staff from the front office as well that were recognized. What did that year look like that allowed you to again receive that award?
Yeah, so keep in mind that was the third year of the Dynamo's existence. We had won the Cup in 06, 07. So we had huge momentum as an organization after being back-to-back MLS Cup champions and just building the organization. It was a third year. While we didn't win the MLS Cup that year, we got eliminated. We got upset by the New York Red Bull in the playoffs that year. We had a great team, and it might have been our best team. Actually, I'd be curious to see what some of the players and coaches felt about that. But it was a season where we were in the of course competed in the league season. We were in the U.S. Open Cup. I think we went pretty far in the Open Cup that year, and we were also in a tournament back in the day called Superliga, which we did quite well in and beat a lot of the big Mexican teams. And so the team had a lot of minutes logged that season. And when we got into the playoffs, I think we just ran out of steam. We hit a team that was hot. Maybe wasn't a great matchup for us. And they actually knocked us out at home. We came home even on aggregate, if I'm not mistaken. And I think they beat us on our home field in sort of a shocking fashion. But point is probably me winning that award in year 3 was a result of the momentum over the previous couple of years, and the success that carried into in 2008. Both on and off the field. We were doing some really good things in Houston. We were relevant in the market. We were generating massive crowds, and just had lots of positive things going. And again, that was at a time in MLS where it certainly wasn't as built up as it is today. Where there's so many different success stories. There was far fewer success stories back in the day. So I guess it was easier to win stuff like this back then.
One of the things I think we kind of brushed over in the beginning was the fact that there wasn't really any pre-existing infrastructure for the Dynamo, but there was for the Dash. So that I know that means you guys built a training center, you guys built a stadium. What did that journey kind of look like from the start? And then on top of that, moving to now in the future, what do those facilities mean in your current role? How do they make things easier? I know that Shell Energy on top of NRG was involved in the Gold Cup last year and hosting games. But do those projects that you worked on now, or that you worked on then, do those make your current role easier now?
Simple answer is yes, David. So when you're hosting a World Cup, you not only need a great stadium to play the matches in, but you need training facilities for the team. You need world-class training facilities. The way the World Cup works is, teams will come into the market, call it match day -1 or match day -2, and they'll train, play the matches, and then they'll leave. They come and go from what's called a base camp. Okay, so all the teams will come and base somewhere and fly to and from the game. So in Houston, we will have our match day -1 training sites, but we'll also be base camps for teams as well. So the Dynamo Stadium, Shell Energy, will be used as a match day -1 training site. The old training ground for the Dynamo, where you used to go to practices with your father back in the day at University of Houston, will be a backup training site. And then the Dynamo's current practice facility, which we built during my time with the Dynamo, is slated to be a team base camp. So, a team from, let's just say Denmark, just pulling a team out of the air, will come and base in Houston and train there every day, and then fly to Atlanta to a game, or Miami. We're also looking to use there's a Major League Rugby team in Houston, and they have a nice little 4,000 seat stadium and a good practice pitch that could also be used as a team base camp. So 2 team base camps, two training sites here in Houston. Having these facilities and this infrastructure in place has certainly been a key to our World Cup planning. And not only do they exist, but they exist in good locations. You need to make sure that these sites are close to the airport, close to the hotels, close to the stadiums, right? Like, you just can't have them 60 miles away. So it all kind of tied together, and it makes for a good way to operate a World Cup.
Yeah. And then I also know that I kind of skipped over a little bit of what you're doing now. But for those that don't know, for our listeners, Chris, you are the president of the city of Houston's bid to be a World Cup host city. And I know not too many people kind of know what's involved in that. And it's a huge project, a huge undertaking to ask of somebody. But could you kind of describe to us what that task looks like from start to finish? Because now we know Houston has been chosen as a host city.
Yeah.
But back when you took on the role, what does that look like to be a World Cup host city? Because that tournament is elevated above everything else.
Yeah, so the first part of the job was leading the bid efforts. There was 18 U.S. cities who were fighting for 10 spots to be a host city. So that was part of my job, was to convince FIFA and all of the decision makers that Houston deserved to be one of the 10 spots. So we worked hard on that from 2019 through 2022. Actually, it was June of 2022, about 2 years ago, when the host cities were announced. During that period of time, of course, COVID was a big issue and really affected the process and slowed things down. But, so for a good 3.5 years, I was squarely focused on selling Houston and telling the story about Houston and trying to ensure that the matches ended up here. And like I said, luckily we were successful. FIFA ended up selecting 11 U.S. cities over 10. And so we were excited to be part of that. And then my role shifted from the bid process to the host process. So now that we're a host city, really it's working with FIFA on organizing everything here. We have 7 matches, all of the trainings that need to go into it that we talked about before in the base camps, all of the transportation, in and out of the city through airports and across the ground, all the hotel accommodations, safety and security. Of course, we can't have any incidents with security. So we need to be buttoned up on that. And it's working with all the different agencies to manage that. It's about, other things that people don't think about, things like human rights and sustainability efforts. It's about legacy, things that we can do through this World Cup to help make Houston a better place for the long run. So there's many, many different moving parts to this job. at the end of the day, it's FIFA's event, and they do the lion's share of the planning and the work. But we are as the host committee are here to assist them and help them to pull it off and to make sure that it goes smoothly in our market. So it's also been a lot of fun to be a part of this, and certainly 2026 is going to be an incredibly exciting time for all of North America when the World Cup is here, but in particular for the cities that are hosting these matches. We like to say here in Houston, it's like having 7 Super Bowls in the course of 20 days. And it's probably even bigger than that, if we're being honest, but that's the way we try to express it to the locals who may not quite have a grasp on how big and how monumental the World Cup is.
Yeah, it really is the biggest sporting event in the world, and I say that while the Olympics are going on. That's probably the second biggest thing. But having a World Cup in your country and within your city, it just kind of interrupts the normal day-to-day life for that entire month with no exception. Everyone's going to be impacted. It doesn't matter what you do, which makes the fact that it's going on successfully even more incredible. And it really puts an emphasis and an exclamation point on all of the work and the planning that you guys do leading up to the tournament. I can't wait to see what goes on, because I know that with everything that's been going on and the tournaments progressing and getting even bigger, that the U.S. with this upcoming World Cup in 2026 and tournaments following that is just going to be wonderful, especially with all of the new world-class stadiums that have been built. I know you were at SoFi last weekend, so it's going to be so much fun to experience that, and then on top of that, like just to experience that level of soccer culture in the United States, which we don't really get to experience on a regular, even week by week basis, unless you're really, really into it. One of the things that I know a little bit about, but I know not that many people outside of Houston would know about, is just what are kind of the things that you pitched about the city of Houston that make it different and unique and better to host a game like that.
Sure. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that go into this. We needed to sell the city. There are a lot of people outside of Houston who don't really understand the city. But some of the key points is that, Houston is the 4th largest city in the United States. Most people don't really recognize that, but we're a big city, big market here in this country. Also, it's a fact that Houston has hosted more major sporting events than any other city in North America since 2004, from Super Bowls to Final Fours to college football championships to All-Star games, you name it. Houston has hosted more events than anybody else, and we've hosted them successfully as well. Many of these events have gone down on record as amongst the best that have ever been organized. We have a world-class airport system here, 2 airports that service international flyers. We've got a huge inventory of hotels. And then, of course, NRG Stadium is a world-class venue, and it's not just the stadium itself. It's an entire campus of venues. It's the 70,000 seat stadium where the matches will be played, and then there's a major conference center and a major arena on site, and all of those things are going to be used for the operations of the World Cup. Most stadiums don't have that type of infrastructure around it on the footprint, and then of course we have a dome as well. So it's great to have a roof overhead to protect from the elements, whether it be the heat or the thunder and lightning or other things that could come through. So and Houston is also one of the most diverse cities in America. So when you bring in the world's game somewhere, you would love to have the diversity and the globalization of it as well. So those are some of the key things that we talked about and hit on and helped educate FIFA about as they were going through their process.
Yeah. And I know a little bit about that stuff because I grew up there, but yeah, Houston really is kind of such a unique place beyond your work, just building successful sports organizations. And on top of that, heading the successful World Cup bid. I know that you've done a lot of work off the field with the surrounding community in Houston, number one, and then also with kind of your home state community back in Connecticut. Can you touch on why that's been such a big focus for you? And then on top of that, how big of an impact do you think it has on a community when a professional sports team is coming in to provide support for them surrounding whatever is happening?
Yeah, I guess I've just always felt that it's part of the job. It is, it's something that we must do, is to give back to the community. I think that sports organizations play a unique role in any given community and have a unique platform and opportunity to make contributions and to give back. So I've always felt that responsibility for the organizations that I've been a part of, and then also myself personally to be able to do that. When tragedies strike communities, like let's just say in Houston's case, like a Hurricane Harvey, let's just say 2017, it puts into perspective that sports is not the priority, that there are many, many other things that are so much more important than the sports teams that we value so much and that we put so much, time, effort, and passion into. But at the same time, while that reality strikes, it becomes clear that the teams have an opportunity to help in the recovery process, right? So again, it's not like we're going to be able to solve all the problems caused by a hurricane, whether it's the Dynamo, Astros, Rockets, Texans, et cetera. But we can play a role. And in the Dynamo's case back in 2017, we used the stadium as a drop-off point for supplies, and it became a distribution center. We ended up hosting a charitable soccer match with celebrities where contributions went to, people who were suffering, on and on. I could go with the list of things, but, at the end of the day, when these things occur, it's an opportunity for residents to unite, to, at a minimum, just go to a game and take the realities of whatever they're facing off their minds for a little bit. So there's so many different ways that sports teams can play a role. And like I said, when challenging things happen or people are dealing with, circumstances that are not ideal, how can the sports come to play a role in assisting in those areas? So that's something that almost every club in sports takes on that responsibility, but something that I've always felt a strong passion for.
Yeah, you've done a great job, Chris, of supporting the surrounding community throughout your entire career. Especially now with the World Cup coming up, it's going to be awesome to see how now, because of the storied relationship between the clubs and the community, how they interact with the games and stuff. It's going to be, I honestly think that this upcoming World Cup in 2026 is going to be one of the biggest ones, and it's going to change kind of the way that we think about the sport in the country. It's going to be amazing.
No doubt about it. I mean, you think about it, it's the first time the World Cup's been held in 3 different countries, US, Mexico, and Canada, 16 cities. This is an incredible project that FIFA has undertaken, but it's gonna impact a lot of people in a lot of positive ways. And when you think about the last World Cup in Qatar, there were 8 stadiums built in a space about the size of the greater Houston area. So now everything was in one area, right, if you will, and now we're across 3 countries, 16 cities, where there's so much unique things about each country and each city that, so it's gonna be a special event, and very exciting for everybody.
Yeah. I know we're just about getting to time, but we do have this one thing that we do with everybody that comes on. We do just a series of 3 quick fire questions at the end. So I've got 3 questions here for you. But the first one that I have for you is, what is the best place to eat in Houston?
The original Ninfa's, Mexican Tex-Mex food.
I know that place. That place is very good. Just around the corner and down the street from Shell Energy Stadium, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that place is awesome.
Yeah.
And then my next question is, what is your favorite moment of your career so far?
Oh boy. Probably opening the Dynamo Stadium on May 12th, 2012, in front of a sellout crowd with Brad Davis hitting a 35-yard strike to win it at home. But for that, but to be honest with you, the announcement of winning the World Cup is right there as well.
Awesome. And then the last one is going to be, and this one could maybe get you in a little bit of trouble, so we can cut it if you want. But which team do you see as the true rival of the Houston Dynamo?
It's probably Dallas. Back in the day, it was between Dallas and Kansas City. We played Kansas City almost every year in the conference final. But I think it's still Dallas. Would be my guess right now.
Okay. No Austin. Austin's not getting thrown in there at this point.
Doesn't feel like it to me. I don't feel like that rivalry's really hit a chord yet. Maybe it gets there.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris. It was an honor and a pleasure having you on.
Well, thank you, David. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Off the Pitch. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to drop us a follow or subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform. Your support truly means the world to us, and it helps us bring you more of the stories that you love from the business world of soccer. And if you have a moment, please also drop us a rating or a review, as it helps us understand what you like, and it also helps other like-minded individuals find this podcast. See you in the next episode.